My talk title is based on the lyrics of a song by Lisa Hannigan. She's a local Irish musician. And it's a song about not taking time to appreciate the here and the now as we all race ahead towards our goals and advancing our lives. And my girlfriend introduced me to her music, and it just melts my heart. So I just thought the kind of lyric was quite cool. So I'm a Dublin local, lived here my whole life, Northsider. And there we go. I enjoy a single pint of Guinness on a Friday night, like a responsible adult should, or at least I used to. I also enjoy Gaelic football and Dublin winning Sam Maguire every year. We're a real pack of winners here in Dublin. So, luckily all you culties are muted right now. So, I can't hear you telling me to shut up. I recently started a company named Slondall Research Limited after working as a sole trader for a few years. And through subcontracting, I've seen how lots of different consultancies do their thing. I've also had to review a lot of different reports by a lot of different companies over the years. And I genuinely believe I can deliver something unique and kind of do try to scope my tests in a collaborative way, kind of getting access to source code and digging deep and spending more time than probably would be normal. So my prices are cheaper. So over the years, I've been exposed to a lot of different roles. I've advised in vulnerability management. I've worked incident response with APTs on the network. I regularly do internal and external penetration tests. And I've luckily been exposed to a lot of different industries and kind of seen how a lot of different businesses of all sizes operate. And to me, consulting is really rewarding as you're just constantly learning and there's always new things to be on top of. So I kind of hope with setting up a company to kind of eventually give other people the same opportunities I've had and hopefully create a few jobs. So I had a pretty good run in the book bounty space with my skills improving year on year. This just kind of little graph is just from BugCrowd and kind of see that the criticalities were higher as time progressed. And I kind of just packed it in a bit in 2019 because the workload working with my clients has got to be too much. So I kind of enjoy my free time. I find the book bounty community is a real phenomenal place to learn. It's unlike anything I've experienced, and I do hope to dip back into it at some point. My favorite work at the moment is working with startups, and I kind of like that you can see over time, a startup starts small with a small team, and if you get them kind of aware of security from the beginning, over time, that kind of cascades as the organization grows. So the security game. This is going to be me reading a kind of spiel. So we find ourselves in a precarious game. The digital landscape and environment changes daily. Expectations and rules don't always apply. And when you play the security game for long enough, you lose the ability to be surprised. So security is a state of being free from danger or threat, which on the internet or greater society in general is never assured. So online, we live on the front lines of where worlds and modern culture collide, relentlessly and all at once. Crime and all the negative caveats of society manifest in bulk here. It's more anonymous and secure for criminal groups to operate online. It's not only are they distanced from their victims, they benefit from the same automations and convenience e-commerce does. So even criminals have to minimize their own operational risks. All of you in security are the defenders and attackers, builders and breakers, and the advancers and enablers of business in this space. So the creators of progress in general, and potentially we're the arbitrators of a future that harmoniously merges technology with society. So on behalf of the planet we're hacking right now, I want to say thank you for all the work you do. Is that too much for a Saturday morning? Maybe. So the problems I see everywhere are the following. Web services are a fun and large attack surface, and by nature, they're publicly exposed. So vulnerability management and maintaining networks is a difficult task. Stuff always and eventually gets lost in space and falls through the cracks. There's a need to move towards a kind of continuous validation of security controls, and asset management and perimeter monitoring are just a growing area, and they're so essential. So to participate in this cyberspace, you need the right tools and resources. You need visibility of your network. You need visibility of the playing field. In this day and age, there's a lot of free or paid network info tools you can use out there. You need to spend the time evaluating your attack surface and what's out there. We've almost reached a point of needing reconnaissance tools to find the latest and greatest tools to achieve this task. So one of these tools is Project Sonar. It's my favorite resource. It has historical DNS data and network scans, and goes back to, I think, 2012 or 2013. So I use Rust scripts to parse out this data into formats I need, and it makes searching it quite easy. And there's a few other tools there listed that can do the same thing. But having historical data to me is incredibly useful, and it gives you a really kind of unique insight into where a company how a company has developed. So, where their assets used to be, what domains they used to use, and you can find a lot of hidden things through looking through that historical data. So with network discovery, a lot of time is spent kind of enriching the data you already have. And over the years, I've created a lot of kind of tools to leverage other tools. So just kind of hacking stuff together. There's a lot of benefits, I feel, to getting familiar with the network discovery process. By building your own unique workflows and uniting sources in kind of unique ways, you can identify new unexplored attack surfaces. So hacking to me has always meant like leveraging the tools or resources at your disposal to kind of achieve a greater objective. So, you can use data in unexpected ways or build on top of the tools or things that have come before. And it's just essentially throwing a solution together to get the job done for the task at hand. So in discovery, anything you do different could be an advantage and lead to you finding kind of easy wins and unexpected results. So, you've gathered all the data, IPs, domains, and ports for your target. You've mapped out the attack surface. What do you do next? So the way I approached this was I kind of created my own tool, and it was developed over a number of years just to help me achieve my objectives. So it's developed in Python, and it runs on most platforms. I've kind of enjoyed the process of optimizing, and it's pretty fast for a Python tool in this space. There's a lot of other good tools out there written in Go and I suppose naturally faster languages. But I like this because I've been maintaining it over time, and I've managed to keep the features I want in a single tool. So, there's a million different scripts out there and web testing tools. But I tried to build something kind of flexible, generic, and quite automated. So it allows me to create modules that I can run a lot of different kinds of web attacks, and I use it for ad hoc tasks too. So in defense, a new vulnerability comes out, I can create a proof of concept and scan the whole network, in a matter of minutes. Over time, you build up modules, and it's kind of nice to have them all in one place instead of grabbing 10 different GitHub projects to do 10 different things. I can do them all with one tool. So I kind of feel like the next step for this tool is to open source it, and I'm releasing it today under an AGPL license. And I suppose the big question people might have is like, does it actually work or do anything different than what's out there already? So last August, I turned my sights on 5i infrastructure. Sorry, I meant FireEye. There's only one letter in the difference, so it's an easy mistake to make. I turned McNally on all the info I found, all the network info I'd gathered of FireEye's kind of public-facing network resources. So as McNally kind of can store the full response data and it's in an SQLite database, it's very easy to search for things. And I essentially ran this across all the open ports, all the domains I found, all the IPs I found, historical and current. And one example here is I found a Splunk application exposed to the internet. So I suppose for anyone familiar with Splunk, they know it runs as root, and it's possible to install your own app plugins. So I popped the root web shell, as you do, and I submitted my report to BugCrowd. Even though the host impacted was only a lab, it's probably insignificant in the grand scheme of things for FireEye, but it's still a foothold that could have been leveraged within that affected network. So, with root, you could have recovered user password hashes or done anything you want to the operating system. The plugins already installed on this tool also had like multiple API keys for different things like VirusTotal, and it's a bad exposure, but they rewarded me their maximum bounty anyway, which isn't bad for an evening's work, and considering I only ran one scan with Scanomally. So it should be clear that, even the giants in the security world can let stuff fall through the cracks. This wasn't meant to be public facing, but it could have been exposed accidentally or temporarily. Oops. So a few weeks later, I ran some more content discovery scans using the same tool, and kind of looked for common directories on all the web applications I identified. So in this case, I found a kind of interesting one where it was just the root domain and /welcome. So I started probing this endpoint and basically identified a kind of weird, insecure direct object reference attack. So I don't know if people are familiar with this, but it's where a developer uses a kind of guessable or enumerable or brute forceable value to reference a data object. So this data could be loaded from the database, for example, but the data is returned without validating if the current user has actual permissions to view it. So I was able to discover email accounts of FireEye customers that hadn't completed a sign-up process. So as you can see kind of on the picture on the left, I don't know if a laser pointer works. It does. There we go. So you can kind of see like this is a form to create an account. And, once I created the account, I was able to bypass their Okta, which is their single sign-on, and it granted me access to their customer portal. So if I was, a filthy hacker, from here I could have downloaded FireEye's products and firmware patches, and, I could have reverse engineered them and potentially found some 0 days in them. But instead I did the right thing and reported the issue, and they rewarded me $2,000 for this finding. Maybe I upset them and they didn't give me the full amount. So I guess there's a lot of different modules I've built over the past while to do a lot of different things. There's a lot of other tools out there that do these things, but I guess my kind of generic solution allows me to take any kind of web-based tool and incorporate it into this kind of framework. So I can do directory brute forcing, I can do generic fuzzing of parameters, I can do vhost brute forcing, etc., etc. And basically, because of the way I've built it, it's configurable, and essentially you can configure what you want to run on specific results. So if you get a 403 directory, you could run a module that tries to bypass 403 issues to kind of expose additional things. Or, you find a directory, it'll recursively go through the directories and brute force for new things. If it identifies a kind of HTTP auth endpoint, it'll automatically run a kind of default user and password brute force stack. So I was going to prepare videos to kind of avoid messing up in a live presentation, but I had a few kind of examples in mind. I was going to write an example and show how easy it is to kind of manipulate web requests and then scan for them across a wide attack surface. But I'm gonna do it live instead, and just hopefully everything breaks. So I'm trying to exit out of my. There we go. Sorry, folks. And hopefully you can see my screen now. So I kind of just prepared a little demo to show the tool running. And what you can see here in the center is a kind of the config, how it works. So I can choose which statuses to ignore. I can choose which modules to run on which statuses. So I kind of created this directory to kind of just give a quick idea of how the tool works. So I'm going to just run a directory brute force, and I think that's everything I need. I'll leave that run in the meantime. It's kind of running in the background, and when you see the results, it kind of will make more sense. Okay, that didn't work. 2 seconds. I knew I forgot a flag. There we go. So I've had a past tool before called Paramet, where I brute force to try identify get and post parameters on an endpoint, and essentially, I just want to kind of show how much quicker this Scanomally tool makes proof of concept in kind of fuzzing ideas. So I take the same tool I had written before. It's just a script. It's like a few hundred lines of Python. So I don't know if you can see it there. But basically, I just kind of want to show how generic Scanomally is and how easy it is to kind of write plugins and modules for this. So,
hey, Ciarán, Paul here. Is there any chance you can increase your font on your terminal and let the folks see a little bit better? Just getting some comments.
Yeah, sure.
It's a little bit easier if you can change it. Sorry for interrupting. Thanks.
Oh, you're grand. It's not a. I forget where it is. I'm not too familiar with Windows terminals. Anyone want to assist?
Hey, don't worry about it. If it's an easy ask, don't worry.
Yeah. No, I don't know how to increase the font. It's probably easy enough to do. But
no problem at all.
So I'll show you the module for Paramet. So in this kind of module, it does a lot more than my old Paramet script did, and it's only this amount of code. So what I can do now is I can brute force to try identify cookies the application's using. I can try identify different headers that the application is using, and essentially just fuzz and use kind of common strings or data to identify get and post parameters. So the tool takes in a list of requests. You can pass in a file containing a list of URLs. You can pass with a -or, like, I don't know if people are familiar with SQL map, but you can pass in an entire request that you could just copy out of Burp Suite and essentially run this tool and detect the anomalies that happen when the request is made. So I don't know if you see there on the left-hand side, but there's one response from the directory brute force that's expected, but that's running through there, and it's making 136,000 requests in a matter of minutes. And it's the kind of thing where, because the data is stored, you can just leave this run overnight and come back to it and assess what the results are in the morning. I kind of expected to have a bit longer here. Or to not go through the talk as quick. So I just have a kind of example module to kind of show you what kind of different things you can do. So yeah, the module takes in a list of requests. You can manipulate these requests in any way you want, and I have a lot of different kind of functions to do this. So you can update the module name, you can update the proxy it uses. You could fire each different request through a different proxy if you wanted. You can import files. One of the parameters it passes in is rules. So you could pass in a different config file that you want to use that kind of does a multi-staged attack. So I don't know if you can see there, it's just brute force in the directory. And the kind of cool thing is it finds a new directory, it'll recursively do that. But also if it finds different things, it'll run. You can kind of configure it to run what modules you want on what results. So I do also have a project roadmap for this. I have a few kind of ways I want to take the tool and I suppose develop it further, but I'm kind of interested to see how a community input could help. So the reason I initially built it was mostly for speed. So I got kind of, maybe go back 2 or 3 years, Burp Suite was very slow. And at the time, there was a plugin called, I think it was like Turbo Intruder or something like that. But you were essentially writing Python scripts directly into Burp as a plugin, or to do custom attacks. And I was kind of like, why use Burp for that when you can just write your own tool to do it? I mean, if you're going to be writing code directly into a tool, I guess it loses its kind of reusability, and it seemed kind of annoying to me. So I like the idea of having custom tools that you can configure yourself. So yeah, and also just because the data is stored in an SQLite database, you can do anything with it. You can do a lot of additional stuff on top. You can import this into other tools. You can use the data in interesting ways. I'm happy to take questions now anyway, if anyone has any.
Yeah, so I think we have 2 questions. So the first one there is, does Scanomally have helper man pages?
So this is definitely something I wanted to have done before I released it, but not right now. So I was going to do a wiki on it, and I suppose as people add modules, we could document how it works. But you can probably see that it's a bit of a mess at the minute. It takes a lot of different parameters. The idea is for it to be flexible. You can pass in, headers. You can pass in anything I feel that I would need to configure. So just here, it's ran through the first 2 modules I specified. So I specified a dir brute force and kind of a repo attack, which would be like common files and configuration files. And you can see that I found one 200 response and one 301 response, which is another directory. So it's just recursively going through that. And from the kind of YAML configuration, it knows what to run on what different responses. And you can kind of play around with this and do a lot of interesting things. I guess like for me, being able to write just 4 lines of code to create a custom kind of template for an attack is really useful. It speeds up a lot of things I do. Just to kind of show there, it's just running through the same thing again on the next directory it found. I think it ends after this one, but it'll print out the results in a kind of interesting way once it's done. But another thing I kind of used this tool for was, say, you're doing kind of white box testing where you have access to the server. So the other thing you can kind of do is pull a list of all the files in a web directory, and then you can run this tool over it very easily. I have flags to do diffs between different databases. So if you run like a scan, once a day, and something changes, there might be something interesting happening there that you can go and investigate afterwards. And that's kind of interesting when you start running it across the whole entire network of assets, because a new website might appear. That's a new attack surface that you haven't looked at yet.
So we have a couple more questions there if you want to take them.
Cool.
One of them there is, so when will it be available to the public and where?
I'm going to publicly release it now. Once the talk is finished, I'm going to just change it from private to public, but it should be up there. So it's been an old version of it's been public for a while, but I'm after adding a lot of different new things. So I guess documenting is my primary kind of goal at the minute, and kind of making it more user friendly.
Okay, and then we have another question. there. So have you built any sort of OLAP reporting that sits on top of or beside Scanomally that runs against the SQLite findings?
So yeah, I do a lot of kind of additional things on top of this. So at the beginning, before I kind of built in the anomaly detection into it, I had a kind of web app dashboard that I could kind of, it would alert me on changes. So if I was like fuzzing the same web app multiple times, a different result could indicate a kind of new development or a new feature of that application. So you could export your entire burp crawl into and just basically use the URLs and run it through this tool. So kind of I found some really interesting like authorization or authentication bypass attacks using that. So you log in with burp and you just test as you normally would, and then just export all the URLs and run it with this unauthenticated and see what endpoints you can hit while unauthenticated. And that can sometimes lead to some interesting information leaks and data leaks from software.
Okay, I think we have 2 minutes there. I get another question in. Can the tool be used for distributed scanning content discovery at scale?
It can. So you might see here, it takes each URL and stores it into its own database. So I suppose like a kind of a roadmap for the tool would be kind of unifying all of them into one kind of nice app that you can just view, easily kind of browse through all the data. But I think this should finish now shortly, but I guess I just kind of want to show how much requests it's making. So that it's already gone through 250,000 requests in the last like 5 minutes or so. But it has some downsides. So I store the SQLite databases while it's running in memory, and understandably, if the tool crashes, it'll wipe that scan that was running. But on the other side, I guess it's a lot quicker. So once the scan finishes, I just dump the memory out into a file. But you can do a lot of different interesting things. I'm kind of hoping it'll develop with open source, and people can kind of build more interesting modules. But it's very easy to take kind of Python proof of concept someone wrote online and just incorporate it into the tool, and it now has all the features that I suppose you don't have to rewrite. It's like saving you a lot of time. It ran quicker when I tested it. But yeah, there's some kind of cool flags as well. You can have it only store unique responses. You can have it so it's quite nice for fuzzing, and because you can pass your own list into it, it's very kind of flexible. So this should finish now and kind of dump out the results from all the scans it did. So this is the kind of format, and you can kind of see it's what kind of request method was used, the URL, how many headers were in the response, the number of string tokens in the response, how long the request took, the size of the response, that kind of thing. But this data is obviously in the database, so it can be reused and used elsewhere.
So we're kind of up on time there now. A very tight schedule, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, perfect.
So thank you very much, Ciarán, for that talk. And I think the link was shared in the chat there if anybody wants to have a look at that tool once it's released. I think it is either now or will be very, very soon. But thank you very much for your time, Ciarán. Appreciate it.
Thanks, folks.